This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. Police in Winnipeg are investigating the circumstances behind a video showing an Indigenous woman being restrained in the lobby of a Winnipeg hotel. The hotel says she was threatening people with a knife. But as CBC's Karen Pauls explains, there are now angry calls for answers.
Protesters took over the lobby of the Marlborough Hotel. These sisters angry and anguished.
I'm here because what happened at this hotel was wrong.
My heart, it just hurt. I was so devastated. I was like, 'cause these things happen all the time.
They saw this video posted on social media of an incident on Christmas Day.
We're taken in the basement now, apparently.
The woman sobbing, her hands apparently tied behind her back with zip ties. She calls one of the men a pervert and tries to leave, but is restrained.
She's trying to run.
No one from the Marlborough would talk to us about what happened here on that day, but they provided a statement saying that at about 1 o'clock, an intoxicated female came into this lobby with a knife and started threatening people. They phoned Winnipeg police, who told them to protect our guests and staff, which they did using wrist restraints. Police did come and arrest the woman.
She was charged with assault with a weapon. Indigenous people stay here when they come to Winnipeg for medical appointments. First Nations leaders want that to end.
What has happened here is inhumane. What has happened here is a disgrace.
We'll make sure that we will follow up with Health Canada, who puts our people here. They are no longer going to disrespect our people that are put here.
Police say it's not clear if this can be considered a citizen's arrest, but that wrist ties can be used to restrain people, although handcuffs are preferred. They've opened another investigation into the circumstances of the video. Karen Pauls, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And now to the follow-up. First Nation leaders say they have already taken action to protect people who had been staying at the Marlborough Hotel. CBC's Emily Brass has been looking into this story and brings us more.
Grand Chief Kathy Merrick says the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs has withdrawn its business from the Marlborough Hotel. She says the AMC wrote a letter to hotel management, then moved most of the people who had been staying there to other hotels. Merrick says the video showing a woman who had been zip-tied raised serious concerns.
For the management of the hotel and for the workers in the hotel to have that abuse of power. And so that does not sit well with any leader or any leadership for that matter in terms of how this young lady was being treated. So if she's being treated like that, are they treating our other people like that?
The Grand Chief says it's time to offer First Nations people services in their home communities so they don't have to travel hundreds of kilometers for things as simple as getting an X-ray, for example. Merrick says until that changes, people from First Nations will be put at risk. Merrick says the young woman is now up in Cross Lake and her First Nation has reached out to offer support. We asked Indigenous Services Canada for more information on how it selects and oversees hotels. ISC says it could not provide that information before our deadline. In the video, the young woman says she was abused by the men who were also filmed in the hotel lobby. Police say they're investigating those allegations as well as what happened yesterday. They say parts of the hotel were damaged during the protest, and we've seen videos on social media showing people from the rally looking for evidence of abuse in the hotel. In a statement, the Marlborough Hotel said it has no further comment as police investigate. Emily Brass, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The federal government is slashing the number of visas it grants to international students by 1/3. The move is meant to crack down on small private colleges offering what the minister calls fake business degrees, and also to take strain off the housing market. In a moment, we'll take a look at what this means for Manitoba. But first, Kate McKenna reports from Ottawa.
Well, look, we've got 2 years to actually get the ship in order. It's a bit of a mess, and it's time to rein it in.
Immigration Minister Mark Miller candidly assessing the country's international student program.
It is not the intention of this program to have sham commerce degrees or business degrees that are sitting on top of a massage parlor that someone doesn't even go to.
The federal government unveiled plans for a 2-year cap on the number of international student permits it'll allow, aimed at stopping exploitative private college programs using international students to churn a profit and freeing up more apartment housing.
It's about time. This should have happened some time ago. On the rental side, you have a lot of low-income renters all battling each other for a low number of spots.
These are all welcoming steps towards betterment of international students and also for the integrity of our system.
The federal government says it'll approve about 360,000 undergraduate study permits for 2024, a 35% reduction from last year. The goal, making sure the program doesn't grow after it ballooned to more than 1 million study permits, mostly in Ontario.
It's unacceptable that some private institutions have taken advantage of international students by operating under-resourced campuses, lacking supports for students, and charging high tuition fees.
Opposition leader Pierre Poilievre laid the blame on the Prime Minister.
He is to blame. He is the one that caused this mess.
But some colleges say they're being unfairly targeted.
I'm concerned that our members are being labeled as fly-by-night, which is not the truth. Our institutions have been operating, many of them for 50, 75. We have members that are over 135 years in operations in Canada and have trained hundreds of thousands of students.
The cap will not apply to international students who are already here, and some provinces can expect to be hit harder than others. Mark Miller warned some provinces could see their number of permits cut in half. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
Now, what this means in Manitoba is not clear. Study permits will be distributed based on population, so Manitoba could receive fewer permits or perhaps even more. As the CBC's Ian Fraser reports, that uncertainty has some international students worried.
Doesn't sound fair even.
Former roommates who once struggled to find a place to live. They say Canada's housing shortage shouldn't be blamed on international students like them.
It's like, well, we've been following your policies. Everybody has been following your policies.
Advocating for international students, Christine Kuya, who's from Bangladesh, is on the executive of University of Winnipeg Student Union. She finds Ottawa's new cap on international students contradictory.
The federal government might have their reasons, but it doesn't match with so many other parties or even our provinces, right? For example, I'm here in Winnipeg, Manitoba, where the government actually wants more international students.
Tomaris Kaliva is from Kazakhstan and is president of the student union. She feels international students are being used.
It's upsetting because sometimes we're used as cash cows, where we're welcomed and we're here to stay, and you know, where everyone's happy to see us, and then the other times we're blamed for the housing crisis, or we're blamed for the rising cost of living.
Manitoba's population of international students is growing fast. The University of Manitoba counts 7,000 international students, doubling its total from a decade ago, while the University of Winnipeg has 1,600 international students, double what it had in 2018. The Manitoba Council for International Education says the province can handle the influx.
The situation in Manitoba is not nearly what it is in Ontario or in BC.
Premier Wabkanu says he's in the dark as to what Ottawa's changes mean. Fewer students from other countries could impact the cost of schooling for everyone.
It's going to put an upward pressure on tuition here in Manitoba.
One student from India doesn't mind.
Every country needs to look out for their own.
3 of Manitoba's biggest post-secondary institutions declined interviews before knowing more about Ottawa's plans, but they all say international students contribute positively to their schools. Ian Fraser, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The Winnipeg Regional Health Authority is investigating the death of a patient who was waiting for care in the St. Boniface Hospital emergency room. The WRHA says the person died early Friday morning after waiting approximately 5 hours. We've been told the patient had undergone multiple diagnostic tests. Wait times throughout the province have been rising sharply over the past 6 months. The Nurses Union says last week, wait times at some Winnipeg ERs exceeded 32 hours. The WRHA says it does not yet know if this death meets the criteria for what's called a critical incident, when a patient suffers serious or unintended harm. A Manitoba man has been sentenced to 3 years in prison for the death of a 3-year-old in his care. The boy died with injuries a judge called catastrophic and profoundly disturbing. 3-year-old Abel Levesque Flett had a seizure disorder and other disabilities. He died in 2018. An autopsy found he had 7 broken bones and more than 70 burns, bruises, and scrapes. But the autopsy could not determine what caused the boy's death. The 27-year-old man pleaded guilty to failing to provide the necessaries of life as the toddler's guardian. The boy's other guardian was found guilty of the same charge last month. Court heard the couple cared for the toddler through a family agreement because the boy's biological parents were not able to care for him. Fire crews were called yet again yesterday to an old warehouse in Point Douglas. Fire destroyed the former Vulcan Iron Works building this past summer. In the 6 months since, fire crews have put out multiple fires there. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, the owner says he wants to clean up the site, but doesn't have the money.
A blaze tore through this once historic warehouse. The fire forced the evacuation of a 3-block area. Today, the rubble remains largely untouched, except for recurring fires that have broken out in the months since, including one just this past Sunday. The property is registered to a company called Gateway Industries, which is owned by Winnipeg businessman Sheldon Blank. He says the city ordered him to clean up the site, but the province issued a stop work order due to the risk of asbestos. Blank says he didn't have insurance, which means he doesn't have the money to pay for the extra costs of asbestos remediation. While he tries to resolve that, he says the demolition work can't proceed.
The property owner doesn't want his property to be started on fire, especially when you have a problem with older buildings where there's the potential of asbestos, and the requirements to do the demolition and cleanup are enormous.
Blank also says the remediation can't happen in freezing temperatures. He blames the fires on people breaking into the property to steal copper wiring. He's appealed the city cleanup order. A hearing was scheduled last year, but was postponed until February. Mayor Scott Gillingham says he's looking into why the Vulcan Iron Works cleanup is taking so long and wants council in the province to take tougher action on properties, including the possibility of expropriation.
If we've got properties that have been boarded up for years, if they're in tax arrears, if they're sitting derelict for years on end, that's not fair to the neighbors. It's neighborhood blight.
For residents like Catherine Flynn, the delayed cleanup shows the need for decision makers to get together and find solutions.
Well, I think they've got to find some way to get, right and left hands talking and cooperating, because while they're diddling around, you're putting an entire community in danger.
The city says no injuries were reported in the latest fire. The cause is under investigation. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
13 city-owned community centres in Winnipeg are getting grants for renovations. More than $830,000 is going to the facilities through the Community Centre Renovation Grant Program. It's for repairs, upgrades, retrofits, and safety improvements. Winnipeg Mayor Scott Gillingham says the city's community centres are unique. They're city-owned, but run by volunteers who need support maintaining them.
Whether it is improving accessibility or upgrading recreational facilities or enhancing safety features, these renovations will contribute to the ongoing success of these community centres.
This grant program's been running since 2012. Since then, $16 million has flowed to community centres. As winter bears down on Manitoba, highway closures are inevitable. Those closures, especially on the Trans-Canada Highway, can cost Manitoba's economy millions of dollars. But work happening along the province's busiest east-west corridor could help mitigate highway closures while also helping the environment. CBC's Riley Lachuk reports.
This is the Trans-Canada Highway west of Winnipeg, a busy 4-lane highway, an important east-west corridor, and a big driver of Manitoba's economy. But it's also wide open and exposed to the elements. That makes this section between Headingley and Portage-la Prairie especially prone to winter closures. It's been closed 24 times due to poor winter conditions in the last 5 years. Aaron Delinick with the Manitoba Trucking Association says those closures cost a lot of money.
If you look at like 1 hour of a delay
just the traffic that's involved in a 1-hour delay on the Trans-Canada Highway, it'd be thousands and thousands of dollars, probably tens of thousands of dollars.
During the first 3 months of 2022, 5 closures of this stretch of Highway 1 cost operators a combined $3.2 million, factoring in time, delays, and fuel. But the Manitoba Habitat Conservancy is working on an eco-friendly solution, something that would help keep this highway open while also helping the environment. It's been working to plant this shelter belt, 3 rows of trees and shrubs. Habitat conservation specialist Kathy Murray says these trees were strategically planted to help act as a windbreak.
In the winter especially, that'll help reduce blowing snow and just make highway conditions safer is the overall goal.
The province invested $3.5 million in 2020 to plant some 30 kilometers of shelter belt along what is considered one of the worst sections of highway in the winter. All trees planted here are native species to Manitoba that have been proven to be able to withstand the elements.
Shelter belts like these have a number of benefits. Not only do they protect the highway from blowing snow and high winds, but this ecozone itself is home to a number of different plant and animal species. And they protect fields like these from topsoil erosion.
So far, the Conservancy says this shelter belt appears to be working.
People seem to like it in general. There may be a little bit of windbreak value, and we see little bits of snow collecting in the trees and in the ditch, so it's something to start with.
But the Trucking Association would like the province to do more. These trees are still years out from having any major impact on driving conditions. The Linux says 24-hour plowing and more digital signage with road conditions are things the province can do now to improve safety.
In a lot of cases, a lot of trucks plan to go at night when there's less congestion. So right now, if there's a snow event in Manitoba, let's say it happens at 7 o'clock and it goes throughout the night, it's not likely to be touched until the early morning hours.
The province says it is committed to increasing how often highways like this are plowed. But it says it needs newer equipment and more people to make that happen.
Road conditions can vary quite a bit from what we see right here around Winnipeg. So just informing motorists ahead of time what to expect when entering the Trans-Canada Highway would go a long way.
The Habitat Conservancy says 2024 is the last year of the Shelter Belt program. The province hasn't said yet if it will be extended.
The hope is, after a bit more research into the growing conditions in particular of this shelter belt, that trees like these could line other open highways in Manitoba. Riley Lechuk, CBC News, near Portage La Prairie.
And here he is again, all warm inside the building. Anything coming in our weather that would put those trees to work?
Well, a little bit of wind coming, and you know, I guess timely that we're talking about that story when we have some windy conditions on the way. Not so much right now. We can take a look at the map and you can see that winds haven't really been gusting all that strong. We have seen winds sort of diminishing as we got through the afternoon today. So we're seeing winds out of the southeast at about 22 in Winnipeg, a little bit gusty in Brandon, seeing winds gusting up to 40, and substantially lighter through parts of northern Manitoba. So right now, the cloud that we've been seeing across southern Manitoba really confined to southern Manitoba. Areas to the north have been seeing some sunnier and clear conditions today, but still seeing a few flurries across parts of southern Manitoba, and even into the southwest, we're seeing a few flurries on and off through today. So here's what's ahead as we look at the next few days here. You can see we start Tuesday under mainly cloudy sky once again. A few sunny breaks, and could even see a few snowflakes once again first thing in the morning through the Riding Mountain region, but really not much to talk about in terms of precipitation, but the wind will be the story tomorrow. We'll talk about that in a sec as we look into the later part of Tuesday. A little more instability moving through northern Manitoba, and that's really going to be the story of the week, I think, is not so much accumulating snow, but sort of these flurries that we've seen on and off. We start Tuesday or Wednesday, I should say, with a little bit more clearing as we head into Thursday. So we're looking at cloudier conditions this week. The trade-off, though, is going to be the temperatures are going to be much warmer. So looking at the winds as we look into the day tomorrow, here you can see as we start the day even, winds really starting to pick up out of the southeast in Winnipeg tomorrow at gusting up to 40. We'll see winds 20, gusting 40 through the afternoon tomorrow. A bit stronger through parts of northern Manitoba. And really that is the story of Tuesday. You're going to really want to watch as we get through the afternoon commute tomorrow, because forecast winds looking like they are going to be quite strong as we head into early Wednesday morning. In terms of snowfall amounts, I did say, expect some on and off flurries this week, but really nothing much more than a trace. So we're going to be seeing some of that light snow as we get through the day Tuesday, and even maybe a chance into Wednesday for parts of Manitoba. Pressure's rising right now, minus 13 degrees in Winnipeg. Tonight we're looking at a minus 15, a mainly cloudy sky with southeast winds at 10, minus 13 first thing in the morning tomorrow. South winds gusting to 40, a breezy afternoon tomorrow with a high of minus 5 and minus single digit high. It's been a while, I think, since we've seen one of those, especially that warm. And as we look at the next few days, Janet, we're looking at some sunny breaks poking out for Wednesday, minus 1. Another chance we could see some flurries for Thursday with minus 2 and a mix of sun and cloud, and minus 2 on the way for Friday. Temperatures like these sticking around. I'll have those details coming up a bit later.
Looking forward to it. Thank you, Riley.
No problem.
We interrupt this winter with news of Winterruption, a music festival designed to tempt you into leaving your home in January. Jorge Requino Ramos is artistic director of Winterruption. Hi, Jorge, how are you?
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing well. What's the coolest thing about Winterruption?
The coolest thing about Winterruption is that it is all made up of unique acts that reflect something about the personality of Winnipeg. We made a really big effort to represent the people of Winnipeg on stage. That is made by representing diversity and representing just the ethos of these bands are something that Winnipeggers are all about. Winnipeggers can't be defined simply just by putting us in one box. Winnipeggers are the warmest people living in the coldest city. So together those things make us complicated. That duality is what I think is the coolest part about Winnipeg. And all of the bands that we picked are like that. You'd be hard pressed to try to put them in one box.
Yeah, you've got a real variety of styles of music. Who's coming?
Well, we have Making Movies coming from Kansas City, Helena Dellen, Rye Webb from the Constantines, Sonny War coming from Nashville, Tennessee, Mule coming from Lyon, France, Wally coming from Quebec. We have, like local darlings, Field Guy, we have Amos the Kid. We have Bicycle Face. We have a huge selection. Elena and the Strangers of really cool bands, we're trying to entice Winnipeggers to not suffer. Don't choose to suffer. Come hang out with us. It's going to be really fun.
I understand dancing is a good way to keep warm.
Dancing is a good way to keep warm, and we have definitely got the material for dancing. Sunday, for example, we have Making Movies, which is like a mosh pit na salsa class, and opening will be local, Elena and the Strangers, cumbia and salsa-inspired Panamanian punk music. Like it's punk music, but you can shake it to it. That's what I'm saying. It's unique. It's not one thing.
And you've got a cool series of venues for these shows as well. Tell us about those.
Yes, of course. It's a bit of the last hurrah for the Goodwill Social Club. It's just before they close down their doors, which is very sad. Of course, the Western Cultural Center, we're a leading partner in this effort. We have been for the last 5 years. The Human Rights Museum, there's a really cool concert. It's not a concert, a really cool event. Indigenous traditional music being performed in an Indigenous traditional way at the Human Rights Museum. It's a round dance. There are invited singers, but there's also singers that can just come and sing. It's all, like a round dance style singing and dancing. There's a feast. It's a real ceremony. It's fun. It's a fantastic event. It's the second time we did it. Last time they asked us to make it bigger. That was the only feedback that we got. And so we are trying to deliver. Of course, the Forex, Room 201, which is a new room that they're trying to work with. There's Keisha Worker's going to do this really cool sort of in the round jam with a band, with the 12-piece band. Every single event is going to be super exciting and interesting and something you shouldn't miss out.
I really feel like for a city our size, and I know I'm not supposed to give my opinion, we're quite blessed with the artistic talent that we have and the folks who come to visit us. How important is it to get out and support efforts like Winterruption?
It's very important because if we can't get audiences on our side and we can't get audiences on the side of the performers, it's really hard for us to continue doing it. It's really hard for us to justify the effort. This is it's a complicated time. Inflation is at an all-time high. We're pinched after the pandemic. and people are probably picking and choosing what shows to go to. So the discoverability of new music, your new favorites, finding new favorites is at an all-time low. And so what we're trying to get people excited about is, these are your new favorites. These bands are going to be playing stadiums next year. You're going to be able to brag and say, I saw this band at the Western Cultural Center, at the Goodwill Social Club, or at the Bulldog Event Center. When they were just starting out, when they were just building their audience, I was there for the beginning of this project. That's something super exciting. And Winnipeggers have those kinds of stories, as you know. When some Winnipeggers were there for the first, for the Muse concert at the Birds, and the bands that went on to become, stadium-filling bands. So this is an opportunity for you to catch them while they are on the rise, and I think that's really exciting.
Jorge Requino Ramos, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much. See you at the shows.
That's Winterruption. Google it for more information. There's our Prime Minister. Housing affordability and the possibility of Donald Trump returning to the White House are things he was talking about today as he sat down with Canada's federal cabinet ministers. He'll sit down with them again because it's a 3-day retreat. We'll have more on that after the break. Federal cabinet ministers have gathered in Montreal for a 3-day retreat. Key issues on their agenda include housing affordability, and even the possibility of Donald Trump returning to the White House. Rafi Boudjikanian has more.
We're casual.
Behind closed doors, it's all business. As Justin Trudeau's embattled cabinet tackles housing and affordability issues weaponized by the opposition Conservatives for over a year. If an election were to be held now, polls suggest the Liberals would lose.
We need to talk about how we are spending to deal with the problems that we have to face in immigration, in housing, and in the care economy.
Part of their strategy, hearing out academic experts in the field on how to right the ship.
We need to have, investment in plant and equipment and new software and all of those things. That's true, we need that. But we also need to make sure that the workers have the skills, the education, that transition from schools into the workplace.
While Conservatives are continuing to do what they have been doing for months, blaming Justin Trudeau.
He's retreating on everything he has done over the last 8 years, right? After 8 years of Trudeau, life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled. We don't need the Prime Minister to change, we need to change the Prime Minister.
The government, though, is not just looking at the looming Canadian election.
Get your neighbors, get your family, get everybody. You got to vote because we have to win by big margins. We have to let them know this is a movement.
With the possibility of a second Donald Trump term ahead, Americans go to the polls this November, and opinion surveys may show a silver lining for the Liberals on that front. Most Canadians do not think another Trump presidency is good news for the economy here.
You have the team here that knows how to deal with a Republican administration. We've done that before. We've negotiated the North American Free Trade. We know how to do things. We've done that before.
We will be ready. We will work with premiers. We will work with the business community. We will work with unions. We will work with the entire country.
The Liberal Party's messaging has already tried tying Trump's Republicans to Poilievre's Conservatives, messaging it may well try to reinforce in the months ahead as Canadians prepare to cast their ballots next year at the latest. One strategy session here devoted to Canada-US relations. Rafi Boudjikanian, CBC News, Montreal.
Families of hostages in Gaza expressed their frustration directly to Israeli lawmakers today. This after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu rejected a new proposal from Hamas. As CBC's Cameron McIntosh reports, Israel's offensive in southern Gaza is not letting up.
Explosions echo through the southern Gaza city of Han Yunis, where civilian casualties continue to climb. Hamas officials say more than 25,000 Gazans have now been killed. This doctor at the Nasser Medical Complex, one of the last remaining in Gaza, says he can't keep up. Israeli forces have surrounded the complex. Inside, the dead, including children, are being buried. We're burying them here because we're targeted when we go outside, this man says. Israel says Hamas is operating in and around medical facilities. Its siege here could continue for days as it tries to eliminate Hamas and return more than 100 hostages taken October 7th.
Our brave soldiers are fighting in very hard conditions for those two aims.
We don't want to see hospitals as war zones.
Publicly, the White House is still urging restraint and diplomacy after a weekend that saw Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reject President Biden's calls for a two-state solution.
We're going to keep the discussions going with our Israeli counterparts.
Nuanced words in Washington, but Netanyahu's rejection is drawing plenty of global criticism, including today at a meeting of EU countries. Pressure is also mounting on him domestically. In the Knesset today, frustrated families of hostages overtaking proceedings, demanding the government do more.
Every day that passes is horrible, and we can't wait anymore, and they're not listening, so we're screaming a lot more. We're stopping being nice.
All while the bombing and shooting continue and the casualties climb. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Heartbreaking and eye-opening. That's how a Winnipegger describes a recent trip to the Middle East. Ramzi Zeid is president of the Canadian Palestinian Association of Manitoba. He's just returned from a delegation to the West Bank. Zeid spoke with CBC Saturday during a car rally protesting the war between Israel and Hamas.
We don't know how lucky we are here. You know what? Every single person should take should be sent there just for a day and take a look. You'll come back with a whole new perspective of how lucky we are here. Jenin by far was the worst. Jenin refugee camp was by far the worst. They ripped up roads, they blew up homes, they blew up water tanks on top of houses. There was holes the size of like baseballs from drones, and they were everywhere. The Palestinian people in the West Bank and in Gaza don't have a voice, and we need to be their voice. So we're gonna step up our fight here in Canada. We can't stop talking about Palestine. We can't let the world stop talking about Palestine. We can't let the government forget that there's normal people there, that there's children there, that they deserve human rights.
Nut-free school lunches have been a long way of keeping kids safe. It's been decades now. But now some Canadian researchers say it's not the way to go, that preventing nuts in schools isn't the way to prevent serious allergic reactions. We'll have more on this after the break. Parents and guardians have not been allowed to send their kids to school with a peanut butter sandwich for decades. Now, some Canadian researchers say restricting nuts at school is not the best way to prevent serious allergic reactions. This has prompted some schools to allow nuts. As CBC's Deanna Sumanek-Johnson shows us, not everyone's happy about the change.
At this Whitehorse Elementary School's cafeteria, happy sounds of kids reconnecting after the holidays. And a few sights you wouldn't have seen in Canadian schools in years. Nuts and peanuts are now allowed for students in grade 3 and up. The initiative says the principal came from the parents. The school invited them for a big meeting.
We basically all agreed that nuts and peanuts were nutritious and they were part of healthy eating habits. So parents were very aware of the research, and they were also very aware of the risks, like the pros and cons of allowing.
The school does have other measures in place. Youngest grades still have food restrictions, and the office is stocked with EpiPens.
For years, banning things like nuts and peanut butter from Canadian schools was considered the gold standard in preventing severe allergic reactions in students. But a major 2021 study led by Canadian researchers found that there just isn't enough good evidence that bans even work.
I don't know if they have what.
Dr. Susan Wasserman was the lead researcher on that study.
What we found is that there wasn't great literature to support the practice.
But the study came with major caveats.
If you are going to eliminate food restriction as just one of the things that may work, that everything else has to be in place. Meaning that the staff and whoever looks after children do have to be aware of who the food allergic children are. Epinephrine auto-injectors need to be on site and preferably carried by the students.
Plus, of course, rigorous hand washing and cleaning of surfaces. But those best practices may not be possible in all schools.
The first module is all about food allergy.
Food Allergy Canada is an organization dedicated to helping Canadians who live with food allergies, a group that includes at least 600,000 school children.
We have to balance, the desire to send in nutritious lunches without any restrictions to the safety of these children.
This expert says schools are advised to have many policies in place, not just bans, but that those recommendations have to contend with reality. Some schools are so strapped for staff that older kids supervise younger kids' lunches.
When it comes to removing restrictions or removing bans, I think that a lot of schools will be very hesitant to consider that because, it does have a lot of implications.
Simon, now 9, almost died when he was 18 months old. His throat started closing after he had a single cashew.
It completely changed kind of the trajectory I thought I was on as a parent.
Sending Simon to school leaves his parents racked with anxiety, something they say would be even worse if more schools were to scrap food bans.
Why reverse it? If the argument is that it is giving people a false sense of security, I want to assure everybody that as a parent of a child who can die from ingesting something, I never have a sense of security, ever, never.
That report from CBC's Deanna Sumanek-Johnson. Thousands of homes are still without power across Britain and Ireland after a powerful storm battered the UK overnight. Storm Isha lashed the UK and Ireland with heavy rain and wind gusts topping 160 kilometers an hour. Police say 2 motorists were killed when their vehicles crashed into downed trees. Isha also caused the cancellation of hundreds of flights and trains. Our weather specialist Riley Leitchuk joins us once again. What's the latest on Isha?
Well, starting to track further to the east, but it's going to take a while for the impacts to really resolve themselves, especially when you're dealing with things like flight cancellations, for example. So looking at satellite radar right now, you can see that we're still dealing with some of that rain moving through parts of Eastern Europe right now, under a cloudy sky in the middle of the night right now across much of the United Kingdom and into Ireland as well, but more cloud back to the west. Let's look at the weather closer to home, because I did mention that we're going to see some flurries across parts of Manitoba, and really, like I showed you earlier, with southern southern Manitoba, pretty much a trace I call it a dusting of snow, really, as we get into the next couple of days. This model wants to put about 10 centimeters through the God's Lake, Island Lake region. I think that is a little bit much. I think generally across northern Manitoba the next couple days, looking at some light snow, which we'll go into a little more detail with in the next couple minutes here. So we're looking at -11 at the Forks right now, -11 in Morris as well. Steinbach's at -12 degrees. Across the rest of southern Manitoba, right around -12, -13. A bit cooler towards Swan River and Dauphin, and we're seeing some of those really cold temperatures in northern Manitoba. Taduli Lake -28. -30 in Thompson right now, and this is about as cold as the overnight lows, or I guess the low temperatures for today will get. We will start to see some rising temperatures as we get into the forecast for tonight. So let's look at northwestern Ontario. We have -15 in Kenora with a chance of flurries tonight, -21 in Red Lake. Through southeastern Manitoba, mainly cloudy skies, flurries ending across extreme southern Manitoba, -14 in both Steinbach and Emerson, -12 in Sprague, -17 in Brandon, -14 in Melita with a chance of flurries tonight. And northern Manitoba, this is where we have some climbing temperatures through tonight. -23 in Flin Flon, snow overnight through the central part of northern Manitoba. Temperature at -23 by tomorrow morning in Thompson, rising to -12 with some light snow through the afternoon tomorrow. Island Lake looking at a -8 tomorrow as well with some light snow. The western part of the province, -3 in Melita tomorrow with clouds. A little bit of sun through the Brandon-Dauphin region, -3s and -4s. Southeastern Manitoba looking at temperatures around -3 and -4 as well with cloudy skies. Slim chance of flurries in Barons River and Red Lake tomorrow, -6 degrees, and a slim chance of flurries in Kenora as well with a high of -4. Your 7-day forecast, which does include more cloud as well, coming up in a bit.
Thanks so much, Riley.
You're welcome.
The Winnipeg School Division is looking for ways to address chronic absenteeism. Will giving teachers extra time to reach out to students who cut class make a difference? The superintendent of another local school division weighs in after the break. Friday here on CBC Winnipeg News, we heard that several high schools in Winnipeg begin a pilot project next month aimed at getting chronically absent students to come to school. Classes at those schools will either start an hour later or end an hour earlier, one day each week, to give staff more time to look for solutions, perhaps even visiting the family to see what barriers can be removed to help get the child to school. Tony Kreml is the superintendent of the Seven Oaks School Division. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Janet, and thank you.
How important do you think those personal relationships from teacher to family could be?
From my experience, they are fundamental to the work that we do. We do certain things intentionally with our families to build those relationships. You know, could cite a couple of things. As an example, we have orientation days for our students in kindergarten through grade 8. And so students come in for a one-on-one meeting with their teachers at the beginning of the year, and that's just the beginning of the journey to the other end at high school, where we do have a teacher advisor program where each student is assigned to a teacher advisor for their grade 9 through 12 years. You know, this is essentially someone who is their go-to person for the 4 years within high school. And they're champion both academically and some of the things they navigate as a high school student. Increasingly, if you start to fall behind, we find that sometimes students are more reluctant to get back to school. But also a big part of going to school is those peer relationships and finding out and living in all those good things that come from that as well. And so if you're staying away from that again, that too may be difficult to come back to the more that you stay away.
What advice would you have to offer to the students and the teachers who may be trying to solve this problem?
I would say for the students that we recognize as a school system that they have hopes and that they have dreams, and that sometimes those could seem like immense challenges, but we're certainly here to work with them hand in hand to ensure that they're seen, that they're heard, that they're valued, and that they can achieve those dreams that they have. You know, for teachers and families, you know, we're well aware of that and recognize that there's challenges along the way. But we certainly commit to be there to work with students of Seven Oaks School Division, which, you know, I know that in talking to my colleagues, that is the same in other school divisions as well.
And do you think the extra hour a week will help?
I think for our teachers, where they're typically in a classroom with upwards of 20 to 25 students, this hour a day to be able to meet with colleagues and develop strategies as to what is working within their classrooms and being able to lean on one another in terms of what's working, and also providing that time to reach out to families on a very personal basis to say, we recognize that you weren't at school today, we miss you, and we want to really see you back at school, goes a long way in making a difference.
Tony Kreml, Superintendent of the Seven Oaks School Division, thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Janet. Take care.
No frustration for fans here. Avril Lavigne is bringing her greatest hits tour to Winnipeg. The Skater Boy singer will rock the Canada Life Centre September 14th. If you're interested, tickets go on sale Friday. Stay with us. Riley Lachuk and your 7-day forecast are next.
So we are looking at a mostly cloudy sky through the night tonight in Winnipeg. Minus 15 overnight, minus 13 first thing in the morning when you wake up. Pardon me, with those south winds gusting to 40. We're looking at a minus 5 under a cloudy sky tomorrow morning. Chance we could see some more flurries on Tuesday with a high of minus 2 as well, with a mix of sun and cloud for Friday. And then we start to see a little bit more sun come out as we get into the rest of the week, into the weekend. Minus 1 for Sunday and Monday, and watch for those windy conditions, but perhaps coming through the day on Sunday. Well, if you know pop culture at all, you've noticed there's a lot of hype about Taylor Swift, of course, and her beau, Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce.
But what if we told you there's a Winnipeg connection to this superstar romance? That is your Daily Lift.
There's your brother-in-law right behind you.
Of course, there's a Winnipeg connection. During yesterday's game, cameras cut to a shot of the pop star celebrating Kelce's second touchdown.
But check out who's in the booth with her. Recognize that guy? That's Zach Collaros, Winnipeg's own. Turns out the Blue Bomber quarterback knows Travis Kelce and his brother, who, by the way, is the shirtless guy you saw in the background.
So apparently the Kelce brothers were Zach's college roommates when they played football together at the University of Cincinnati.
Oh, my friends. Oh, I tried to get Zach Collaros to talk to us today about Taylor Swift because, look, they're in the same picture right there. It looks like they're very, very close. Our producer, Holly Carrick, is a big Swiftie, so I thought I'd try. And I pleaded and I begged. Darren Cameron of the Blue Bombers and I were texting, and I was going, please, Zach, do it for Winnipeg. But
we'll see.
All my best
Maybe
groveling.
another day.
He says no. Forget it. I tried.
See you tomorrow.
Have a great night. See you at 11.